Hello, and welcome to our Wellbeing at Work podcast series. My name is Sanura Montgiraud Scott, and I'm the clinical team lead at Workplace Options based out of Toronto, Canada. In recognition of the upcoming Mental Health Awareness Week, I have the pleasure of speaking with Irene van der Zande, founder and executive director of Kidpower International, to talk about taking charge of your mental health. Irene is an internationally recognized personal and emotional safety skills expert, author, and trainer. Through her leadership, Kidpower has created in-person as well as online programs that have taught millions of adults, teens, and children worldwide how to stay safe with people. These programs do provide knowledge and skills that help to prevent harm such as bullying, harassment, abuse, assault, intimate partner violence, discrimination, and so on, and to strengthen relationships to add connection, joy, and purpose to our lives. I do want to also mention that WPO is partnering with Kidpower International to be a part of our Impact project this year. Our theme is called Empowering the Future, which is focusing on putting the spotlight on the emotional and physical well-being of people of all ages, abilities, and cultures worldwide. And through this partnership, Workplace Options employees and member clients will have access to Kidpower's resources, including their live workshops, online training courses, and educational resources. So with that said, hello, Irene, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. You know, one of the many, many things I really appreciate about Workplace Options is your very holistic approach to employee well-being, and that it includes not just their work lives, but all of their personal lives. I think that all by itself is a huge, huge gift to their mental health.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing that. It's definitely one of the biggest aspects of the services we provide. So we definitely pride ourselves on that holistic approach. So just jumping right into some of the things we wanted to discuss, can you comment on some of the main factors contributing to mental health challenges among employees in the workplace?
Yes. I was just hearing recently from a very kind and competent manager whose company is undergoing a reorganization. I mean, his own job is secure, but he's dealing with the loss of somebody that needs a job and won't have it anymore, with the loss and stress of having an increased workload, and also just with the uncertainty of what the future is going to bring. We are working with so many families and schools where their children are still struggling with the isolation and stress from the pandemic. And everyone is struggling with tragic news about natural disasters and violence, and fears about social and political unrest add to their stress. A lot of people struggle with overwhelming feelings of helplessness at times. And as you know, helplessness can lead to despair, and despair can lead to trauma. We strongly encourage people when they're struggling to seek counseling, and we're very fortunate that many mental health care professionals are incorporating Kidpower programs into the wonderful work that they're doing. Because practicing simple, positive skills about how to take charge of your well-being, how to protect your kids, how to advocate for the well-being of others, can help you to have a sense of your own power. And that helps to replace despair with hope, even in the middle of troubled times.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a huge thing, especially with recent events, and it just seems like we're being exposed to more and more information these days. So I definitely see similar things in my work as well.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, unfortunately, but as you said, there's resources, and encouraging people to seek the support is, that's how we can contribute. So thanks for sharing that. And then jumping into the next question, from your experience or perspective, what do you believe to be some of the most common misconceptions about mental health that still persist today?
Well, unfortunately, as I'm sure you know, there's still a lot of stigma and shame attached to having mental health issues. I think too often seeking help is seen as being weak. And to help change this perception, one of the skills we teach and have people practice in Kidpower is to be persistent in getting help, even from busy, impatient people. And I can't tell you how many times adults and kids alike will say, I hate asking for help. There's also the perception that needing professional counseling or even medication means that somebody's worthless. I remember once visiting a friend after she was hospitalized for a mental health breakdown. And this very strong and extremely competent and kind person just told me sadly, no one at work will trust me anymore. Everyone will think I'm crazy. And trying to hide and cover up her problems had increased my friend's stress to the breaking point. I pointed out to her that people at work were missing her and that having problems doesn't mean that you aren't valuable. One of our emotional safety skills that I'm going to invite you to just kind of help demonstrate with me now is what we call the that's not true technique. So the way you do it is somebody says something that might be true connected to something that's not true. And the technique is to put your hands in front of you like a wall or a fence, like with your palms facing out, so it's between you and the other person or between you and that voice in your head, and just say out loud, that's not true. Would you just do that with me? Just go ahead and say, there you go.
That's not true.
Excellent. So let's imagine that I'm someone who's very mistaken and who says, you're crazy and unworthy and untrustworthy because you have mental health problems. Put your hands up and say,
that's not true.
Exactly. We take a lot of examples from people like you're weak because you're a woman. That's
not true. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing how it can, or even with young kids, you know, the words crybaby is like saying the most awful things to somebody as an adult. But for a child, crybaby, to say you're a baby because you cry. I've heard 3-year-olds put their hands up and had them say, that's not true. They built it
Wow.
out. Yes. So another technique that we practice is something we taught to young children at first, because it was invented by a first grade teacher. It's our Kidpower trash can technique. And then we found that we were using it ourselves all the time. So we teach it to everybody worldwide. So if you would imagine, and this can be for something somebody else says or something you say to yourself. So is there something you say to yourself that undermines your happiness or health or mental health or well-being?
For me, it's definitely like imposter syndrome related type of stuff, which I think is pretty common for young people in the workplace. I mean, maybe for everyone, but I can only speak for myself. So it's, I don't know exactly some of the thoughts. I haven't sat down and really done that yet, but I know it has to do with, not feeling like you deserve, where you're at in life professionally right now.
Okay, so let's take those words, I don't deserve this. And now grab some air and imagine that you're grabbing the words. Put your other hand on your hip and pretend that is whole as a trash can. Now grab those words. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this. It's just all fake. Or, other people deserve this more than I do. Or all those words. Mm-hmm. Throw them in the trash can. Just do a physical, throw those words into your trash can. Because sometimes people do it with a real trash can, but right. This is one you have with you all the time. And now put your hand on your heart and say, I am valuable.
I am valuable.
And I deserve everything I have. And
I deserve everything I have.
Yeah. So it's whether it's somebody else saying something. Often I say to people, how many of you ever tell yourselves, I'm not doing enough? And so I have them catch those words, throw them away, put their hands on their hearts and say, I do a lot. Have you ever made a mistake, Sanura?
Oh yeah, for sure. Plenty.
Have you ever made the same mistake over and over again?
Yes, I have.
Well, so have I. Okay, so let's take those words. Oh, I did it again. Catch those words. What's wrong with me? Throw them away. Throw them physically into your trash can. Great. Now put your hand on your heart and say, I do not have to be perfect to be great.
I do not have to be perfect to be great.
Wonderful. So we have tons of these types of skills. They're just little quick additions that let people, because doing things with your body, even motions like this, help your mind to remember to use those skills in real life.
Wow. Yeah. No, I noticed that both those skills that we just saw, like, were very involved physical motions. And, yeah, I think that's pretty innovative. And I mean, yeah, it's definitely something different to add to the toolkit. So I appreciate that. And I will be using those. Thank you.
I love that. Okay.
So I guess I'll jump into the next one. So what role does workplace culture play in promoting mental health?
Workplace cultures that promote respect, safety, and kindness for all their employees, all their customers, everyone around them, help to create a mentally healthy environment. And that is an environment where it's harder for problems there will be problems, but it's harder for them to grow. Doing this requires that the leaders in the workplace model being respectful, safe, and kind in their interactions and words, even when they're frustrated, have to set boundaries, or even let someone go. I once did a workshop on stopping workplace bullying with a women's health center. And the issue that I was brought in for was about how do they protect their staff from bullying from patients, and often the patient's partners. And then finally somebody was brave enough to say that a physician was yelling at the nurses and the aides, and that the clinical director realized she had been excusing this behavior because she'd been thinking, this doctor can't help it, she's from New York City. And of course that she realized that being respectful had to be a rule for the doctors even more than everybody else, because they're seen as the leaders in that environment. And so it was, I think, that realizing that now anyone at any level can decide to act with kindness, respect, and safety. And a culture requires that it be done at all levels and supported at all levels.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I'm curious, in terms of creating that safe space for people, what do you think about like vulnerability and how that should be modeled by the leaders in an organization?
Yes, and I often work with people ahead. Sometimes I've had to work with, when we're working with troubled youth, for example, and the male counselors, and I want them to practice walking away from trouble instead of getting into fights. So I coach them ahead of time. I say, set a good example. And because otherwise they might just act aggressively themselves.
Right.
We coach people. When we work with people and we do trainings, we have a needs assessment ahead. We talk to people about, you need to be there modeling, doing the skills, acknowledging, and we find something that's safe for them to share. Something mean they say to themselves, just like I did with you, or something that is hard for them. And by giving people, I often give people a practice where they say, I give you permission to say what you think. They each say that to each other. And their job is to say something really positive about the other person, and then something that they would like that person to change, and in a respectful and kind way. And we practice how to say that respectfully and kindly. And then, and in this practice, one of the leaders of this organization said, I realize that I have been getting impatient and unkind and making it hard for people to give feedback. And I'm so sorry. And I want you to tell me when I'm doing it. Mm. It changed everything.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. I thought that was like something very relevant to my role, and just, vulnerability, I feel like it's one of those topics where it's not black and white. So you kind of, I feel like, have to experiment a little bit and, be vulnerable in trying new things and new ways of doing. So yeah, I appreciate that, and we'll definitely take it with me.
Yes, well, I often, as the person leading the workshop, will talk about my own failings. And I will, I'll never say it's a member of my family, because my family has nice, strong boundaries, but right. I will say a friend of mine or a friend of mine's child or something like that, just because sharing a personal story helps people to feel safe. I once had, and once you do that, people will all sorts of things open up. I wasn't expecting this, but I once had, benign positional vertigo, which meant that I got very dizzy every time I turned my head. And I was in this program where I was teaching, and had to do a theater in the round because the room was too crowded, so I had to turn around all the time. And so I just started it by saying, I want you to know that I have this benign positional vertigo. That means I get dizzy. I'm fine. It doesn't mean I'm drunk. It just means I'm dizzy. And this woman came up to me at the break and she said, I have been so worried about being dizzy. I was afraid something terrible was wrong with me. And I said, go get help. Odds are it's something that that can be dealt with. And if there's a problem, the sooner you deal with it, the better. It's just setting that example. I never intended that the fact that I was afraid I was going to fall over in the middle of leading a workshop was going to have that effect, but it did.
Oh, yeah. Definitely something to think about for sure. I think it's always in the back of my mind. So, I appreciate that as well.
Yeah, well, I love that question too. And yeah, it's great.
All right. So our last question, can you share some strategies for organizations to create a mentally healthy workplace culture and destigmatize conversations about mental health among employees? It's a long question, but I think we talked a bit about the first part. Yes. So, if there's anything you want to add, or just, the destigmatization part as well.
Yes, well, I do think that sharing stories, like we just said, and I do think that just the very fact that that Workplace Options provides counseling is a form of destigmatizing, because it normalizes the fact that people sometimes have problems. And that, and another part of it, though, is because people have such a resistance to asking for help, is that preparing and encouraging employees to reach out if they see somebody struggling with a mental health issue. And even though they're not counselors themselves, just showing caring, suggesting that this person seek professional help can make such a difference. And I know people often don't do this because they don't know the words to say, or they're afraid of being offending the person, or being rejected. And so sometimes we just have people practice what they can say and finding the right words in their environment. It might be something like, I'm sorry things are so hard for you right now. And maybe talking with a counselor could help. It helps me.
Yeah. And that's kind of going back again to that vulnerability thing, and modeling, the behavior. It's like saying that you've potentially at some point sought out counseling and that, it was helpful for you, and takes away that taboo aspect of seeking help. Yeah.
Yes, and I think for people to understand that even small, kind, genuine connections like that can make a big difference. And if the person gets upset with you, speaking up is more important than people being upset sometimes. And saying, offering help, and you can just say, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, I didn't mean to make assumptions. But if you never say anything, that's where the secrecy that leads to problems growing increases.
Right. It's better to like take the risk, I guess, of, being wrong
Yes.
than just staying quiet, and then the risks might be like worse from that. Yeah.
And it might not even be that you're wrong. It just might be that the person got triggered by.
Yeah. They're not ready to
They're not
kind of
ready.
talk
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I know that workplaces struggle with is being productive and being supportive. And one technique that we have is to let people and encourage people to, even in a meeting, say the headline, but not the whole story. And then to acknowledge that. So it goes really quickly. It could be, I just say, how are things going? And people know I don't want the whole story. We don't have time for that. But people could say something like, I'm upset because my partner and I broke up last night. And then the meeting leader can just say, that sounds very hard. Please take care of yourself and let me know if you need help. And then go back to the meeting. So people often get into this, if I open the door or I open the gate, I'm going to get flooded. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. Yeah. No, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And then finally, I think, and this is where our work comes in, is people, if you make sure everybody knows and can use positive communication and conflict resolutions and prevent problems proactively, then everyone's better prepared to work together as a team to create a mentally healthy workplace.
Yeah, I totally agree with the proactiveness instead of being reactive. And I think, encouraging people, talking about the employee assistance program that's like available. I mean, we have one for our employees here, and, reminding people regularly reminding people that we have that so that they don't have to ask us for it, when things get to that point. And also just, I find encouraging people to take time off. I don't know how this is in other workplaces, but definitely prioritizing that so that it doesn't get to a point where now you need the time off because you're like desperate to have, a day or two off. So I definitely think being proactive is important. I don't know if you know if you have any other suggestions or techniques in terms of that proactiveness for people so that they can kind of apply that in their workplace.
Yes, well, we absolutely making self-care a priority. Speaking up about problems with people, setting boundaries. Again, this goes into, we have a whole bunch of, we provide training and have courses online and resources. But speaking up in a way that's kind and powerful at the same time so that you head off problems, because relationship problems, a lot of times, I mean, somebody can be upset just by somebody closing the door a little too hard.
Yeah.
Or somebody else can be upset and not say anything until it becomes a big explosion because somebody's standing too close, or maybe they keep interrupting them when they're working. And instead of saying, excuse me, I need more space, excuse me, I need to get this done, even practicing how to interrupt and redirect people, as well as to set boundaries, really does help to create a more mentally healthy workplace because people are getting along better.
Right. No, yeah, that's great. And I think that all the feedback and tips you've provided today apply to all levels within an organization. So helpful for leadership and helpful for, employees as well. So I think there's tools for everyone there. And, I find really fascinating and important. So I really appreciate those, and I will definitely keep them in the back of my mind moving forward. So I appreciate what I've learned today as well.
Well, thank you. And I love what you do and the work you do and the way you do it.
Thank you. Likewise. Well, we're glad to be partnering. I think it's there seems to be a lot of tools and a lot of stuff that you guys do at Kidpower. So super interesting and valuable work. But yeah, that was it for my questions. And I'm not sure if there was anything you wanted to share before we wrap up.
Well, just that people can email us at any time at safety@kidpower.org. We answer questions from people all over the world. We point them to resources. We strongly encourage people to seek counseling. And we also, if people have a specific concern or problem or want to know how to find something, because our website is a bit overwhelming. And so we say, how do we find the things about bullying or child abuse prevention or, or leadership? Those are, contact us. And our website, we have a huge free online library as well as providing bunches of training. And we do our trainings online, and live online trainings are possible anywhere in the world where there's an internet connection.
Wonderful. That's great. Yeah. And so I just want to thank you as well. Just before we go, I did want to just let everyone know that Workplace Options is the largest independent provider of holistic well-being solutions. And through our customized programs and comprehensive global network of credentialed providers, and professionals, WPO supports individuals to become healthier, happier, and more productive, both personally and professionally. And if you want to learn more about Workplace Options programs, to anyone listening, and our services, you can email at service@workplaceoptions.com or visit our website, which is www.workplaceoptions.com. So those details will also be provided on the podcast page. But Irene, I want to thank you so much for speaking with us. It was a really enriching conversation, and I'm really glad we got to touch base today and exchange strategies. I know I learned a lot, and I hope our listeners did too. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you. It's just great having this chance to talk together.
Great. All right. Well, hope to speak to you soon.
Yes.